Hey everybody, welcome to another show, Jim Hall, You Ought to Know, from the Balboa Peninsula. We've got the Ferris wheel, I've got the Balboa bar, the famous Balboa bar, and of course we've got the boardwalk here. There's the amusement parks, there's plenty of food to eat, a lot of pizza, a lot of goodies, but that's not why we're here today, even though I've got the Balboa bar. Can't beat this. But today we're going to take another adventure right here on Balboa Pier. We're actually going to ride a Segway. Stay with us. Why are we here at Balboa? Simply because you ought to know. Good stuff. Welcome back, everybody. Jim Hall, You Ought to Know, and we've traveled to the beach community, Newport Beach. Actually, we're here on the Balboa Island Peninsula, and I'm with Scott. Scott, introduce yourself.
Scott McElroy, General Manager here at Segway Orange County in Newport Beach.
And that's where we are, Segway of Newport Beach. And a Segway is what?
Segway is a self-balancing vehicle that is essentially a scooter, which will allow you to ride up on the boardwalk, sidewalk, or pier in California and 47 other states.
All right. Segway is a two-wheeled vehicle. Do they make a three-wheeled Segway?
No, they do not.
Not a Segway?
Correct.
Okay, so let's talk about Segway. What's the history on Segway, and what's the popularity? When did they become so popular?
Well, back in December of 2002, a gentleman by the name of Dean Kamen introduced the Segway technology to the world. And essentially, his concept was that we needed a green mechanism for transporting pedestrians to and from either work or for recreation, and it's a pretty effective means of getting around. 24-mile range on a battery charge, and just takes a couple hours to charge up. So.
Well, wait a minute. Now, you mentioned green. All the way back in 2002, somebody was thinking green way back then?
Well, Dean was a little ahead of his time. Yeah. So he had essentially developed a wheelchair called the iBot, which was a machine that allowed those who are handicapped to move up and down stairs and also raise that person up to eye level. So as an outgrowth of the iBot technology, the self-balancing mechanism was migrated over into the Segway.
Now, I have bad knees. Is this something I can still function on?
Well, it's funny you mention that, because I actually had some tennis injuries, and I had some issues with my knees, and for whatever reason, riding a Segway has alleviated that issue. It's a very slight movement, I think, on the meniscus, and it causes that to be exercised over a period of time, and something that I couldn't get rid of for 3 years went away in about 6 months. So. I'm not sure what the medical reason is for that, but it's a very slight bending motion on the knee, and it seemed to work pretty good for me.
Well, let's talk about the setup you have here, and then we'll talk a little more about the history of Segway. But here we are. We're here on Balboa Boulevard on the Balboa Peninsula, and you obviously have people. They can come in and take a tour of the store here. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, we offer tours of the Balboa Peninsula. Our tours depart daily at 11, 1, 3, and 5. Recommend advance reservations, and for $65 per person, we'll train you how to ride a Segway. We'll have you watch a little safety video. We'll put a helmet on you, and we'll take you for a tour of the Balboa Peninsula, which includes going up the pier, around the park a couple times, all the way down the boardwalk to the entrance of the Newport Harbor. We'll give you a little history of the area, as well as bring you back along through some nice homes and yachts. We'll tour the Bay Area as well, and then back to the store.
All right, now we're going to do a little bit of that here in just a little bit on the couple of the segments. We're actually going to be out there doing this and riding the Segways and seeing what that experience is like, something I've never done before. So let's talk about the history of Segway a little bit deeper. Numbers of Segways that are out there or that have been sold. Do you have a clue?
As of August of 2006, there were approximately 25,000. Now I would estimate there's somewhere close to 50,000.
So that number really goes up, and as the gas prices go up, I would imagine these type vehicles are getting really popular.
They are. We've got a number of people that have come in recently that are giving up their motorcycles and cars in favor of Segways to get, within 8 miles or less to and from their work.
Now, we're from the high desert area, but we certainly reach a lot of our folks in the Inland Empire and Rancho Cucamonga, Fontana, Highland, and all over. And I travel Orange County fairly extensively, and I've seen people actually using this as a commuter device. I've seen briefcases going down, and they've been on Segways, so they're going probably the short jaunts to work, I'm guessing, but they're out there doing it.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's great to get, post office, bank, your friends' homes. It's just a neat way to get around. We've got a lot of police departments that are starting to incorporate them into security patrols, also mall, high school campuses, that sort of thing. So it's nice when you've got an extended range to patrol or a lot of walking to do, and you need an efficient way of getting around.
Well, you say efficient way to get around, and I know Disney has used the Segway for quite some time now, and they actually can move around the downtown Disney area or around the park as need be fairly quickly. And I know a lot, as you mentioned, a lot of the police departments now are actually customizing these things to fit the department as one of the vehicles.
Correct. There's a number of options that we offer on the Segways to allow them to transport cargo. Disney has over 70 machines right now, and our facility up in Anaheim handles the maintenance and the sales to Disneyland here in Anaheim.
So when we have Segway, when you talk about Segway, how many different models of Segway are there?
Well, essentially there's just two models. There's the commuter version, which is an I2 version, which is something like what we have here, minus the custom paint job. Okay. And then there's the off-road version, which is known as the X2. That's the second version of the Segway. So now each of these can be customized in various methods. For instance, there's a model called the X2 Golf, which is right back around this way. It has the carrier for the golf bag, and it also includes a scorecard holder and whatnot. So these have various price ranges, but essentially those are the two models, I2 or X2, either commuter version, which is the one that's designed to go on sidewalk, boardwalk, and pier, and then the off-road model, which is the X2.
All right, let's talk real quick about numbers. What do we got price-wise?
You're looking at $5,145 for the I2, $5,660 for the X2, and then for the golf model, $6,175. Now, those prices are going up by 4% effective July 1st. Segway announced a price increase about a month ago.
All right, there it is. We're going to experience a little bit of the Segway coming up in the show. We're going to be back in just a moment, though. We're going to talk about some of the laws, things we need to think about. Do you need to wear a helmet with these? We're going to find out about that, and some of the safety routine. What do you need to know to be safe on a Segway? We're at Newport Beach. Balboa Peninsula is where we are, right here on Balboa Boulevard, and we're Segway of Orange County. Don't go anywhere. Why are we here experiencing Segway? Simply because you ought to know. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. Jim Hall, you ought to know at Balboa Pier. We're down in Orange County, and today we're talking about the Segway. And with me, introduce yourself again, Scott.
Scott McElroy, General Manager of Segway, Orange County here in Newport Beach.
Now, how long have you been here with Segway?
I have been here for over 2.5 years.
Okay, and is that when the store actually opened?
Store opened about 3 years ago.
Okay, so we're here, we're doing the Segway today, and this model is called?
This is the Segway I2 commuter version.
I2, and then there's the X2.
That is correct.
All right, two different versions, a little bigger tires on the X2, right? A little more for the off-road type person?
Exactly. Reinforced control shaft, little different fenders, wider tires, better for sand and that sort of thing.
Now, we're going to do a tour here coming up in the next segment, but you got to train me first. Right. So first off, what about laws, things we need to know, safety things? What do we have to worry about with a Segway?
Well, a couple things. We get a lot of questions with regard to the laws on Segways, and California DMV Section 467 and 313 define a pedestrian as anybody who's afoot or on a Segway. So technically under law we're pedestrians. Because of that, there's no license, no registration, and technically no helmets required, although we do recommend them and require them on our tours. And there is a headlight that's supposed to be on the Segway a half hour after dusk and a half hour before dawn.
Well, if that's the case, if they're considered to be a pedestrian, just like I would be walking, does that mean these are permitted in malls and other shopping areas and normal pedestrian traffic type areas?
Yeah, public areas, they are permitted. malls are private property, so it depends on the mall owner as to what the regulations are. If you have, if you are handicapped or you have a handicap placard, then of course you're permitted to go.
Do you actually wear your placard around your neck or that sort of thing, or what do you do?
No, I don't. There's a number of malls, especially down in this area, that permit the Segway, so it really hasn't been an issue for us down here in Southern California.
Yeah, it really becomes a culture thing, doesn't it? Because Segways are a lot more popular, I would imagine, near the beach in Orange County than they would be inland in LA.
Yeah, it's definitely climate related. So, I mean, if you're in a temperate climate where you want to be outdoors, this is a perfect vehicle to have.
Now, how long can I run the Segway on a charge? If I'm out today, how long can I expect the batteries to last?
The i2 model has a range of 20 to 24 miles on a full charge. The X2 model has a range of 14 to 16 miles.
All right, are you ready to do some training here?
Absolutely.
Let's see what I need to know first. This is kind of a balance thing now, isn't it?
A little bit. Basically, what's going to happen here is I'm going to have you step up on the platform. There you go. And the Segway will balance you. So essentially the way this works is the platform will sense weight transfer between your toes and your heels a couple hundred times a second. So very gently put pressure on your toes. We call it toes to go. Great. And then put pressure on your heels. You'll come to a stop, and if you keep leaning back on your heels, you'll go gently in reverse. So come forward toward me. Just gently lean forward on your toes. Right, keep your eyes up because that changes your weight distribution, right? And gently back on your heels, you come to a stop, slide the handlebar gently to your right, and that will cause you to turn to your right. And lean forward, come straight toward me. Great, you're doing a great job, Jim. Good. Great, and very gently back on your heels, you'll come to a stop and slide the handlebar gently to your left. Great, and come around to the left. Nicely done. Okay, and again, forward on your toes. Great, so we're going to do this a couple times until you get a little bit of a comfort level. Slide gently around to your right this time. Great, handlebars to your right. Good. Great. And forward on your toes. Good job. Nicely done. Okay, great. Back on your heels, slide around. And then I'm going to hold on to the handlebar while you step directly off the back of the unit. Great.
All right, now I got to tell you, I mentioned bad knees there, and it's starting to feel a little bit more comfortable. I spent a couple minutes on it here, and I must tell everybody we tried it in the shop there before we left, so I had a couple minutes there, and that's really all I've had up on the platform.
Yeah, pretty much everybody gets used to riding a Segway after about 10 or 15 minutes. So there's a little psychology involved because it looks like it shouldn't work, but it works very well. I've been riding 2.5 years. I have yet to fall off, and I've personally given over 1,400 tours, which is many thousands of people, probably trained over 10,000 people, and I have yet to have anybody get injured on it. So we've had an excellent safety record here in Newport Beach.
Well, you mentioned the sensors on this. I mean, this looks very simple. Handlebars, 2 wheels, a platform to stand on, but this is very complex and detailed.
Yeah, one of the reasons why a Segway is so expensive is because every component is redundant. The computer systems that manage the balance are redundant. The gyros, there's 5 gyros, 3 are active, 2 are backup. You can even lose a motor and the Segway will remain upright. Every component's redundant to ensure the utmost safety in a Segway.
So that means there's a motor for each wheel then? Is that what you're looking at?
That's correct. There's a motor for each wheel. They're essentially the batteries, the computers, everything's redundant in the Segway. The platform's sealed. It's waterproof. You can ride through up to 8 inches of water on a Segway. The electronics are wireless. So this is the key for the Segway. You get 2 of these when you buy a Segway. It controls a number of things, including the security feature of the Segway, which is a built-in alarm system. You can set the top speed. It shows you the odometer setting, current speed, that sort of thing.
All right, are you ready to go touring a little?
Yeah.
Give it a try?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to get a helmet on. We're going to put them on there, and we're going to go riding. How about that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
We're right here in Orange County. He's going to ride that off and get ready to go, and while he does that, let me tell you, we're going to take a little tour, and we're going to ride the Segways, just like you can, right here at Balboa Pier. We're at Segway of Orange County. That's where we are, simply because you ought to know. Stay with us, everybody. We're going touring here in just a second. You ready to go, Scott?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. Welcome back, everybody. Jim Hall, You Ought to Know. And what you ought to know, Scott, is I'm up here on a Segway. You'll have to yell at me. The mic is actually tucked in right here under my chin.
That's okay. Well, right now we're heading up the Balboa Pier, Jim. And, this area of Balboa originally wasn't so popular because of the beach, but it was actually dancing that made this area popular. And back behind us, we have a couple spots where there were grand ballrooms. The Rendezvous Grand Ballroom is one of those areas. It was built back in 1928 and was popular through about the mid-1960s. Up here on this pier, we've got the very first Ruby's restaurant that was built in Southern California. It was built back in 1982. There's now a chain of about 45 locations.
Well, wait a minute. This is number one. This is the first Ruby's built right here.
First Ruby's built in Southern California. Yeah. So pretty interesting spot. Actually, Ruby herself was here this last December 7th, autographing calendars in honor of their 25th year in operation. So unique spot down there. Now, up to the north of us, we've got the Newport Pier, and down to the south of us here, we have a rock jetty which juts out from the beach there. That's known as the Wedge. Now, the Wedge has been featured in quite a few surfing movies. It's pretty popular because of the way its effect on waves is implemented. Basically, as one wave washes off of those rocks, it undercuts the next wave coming in, effectively doubling the size of that next wave. So it's pretty good for boogie boarders, body surfers, and shortboarders. Most of the guys, though, that surf longboards, they prefer to surf north of the Newport Beach Pier at 26th Street all the way on up through Huntington Beach. So this is always a nice spot for families to come with their kids. We get a lot of nice family photos out here. It's kind of hard to find activities that teenagers and adults both enjoy, and Segways seem to be one of those. So we're pretty pleased with the results of the tours here.
Well, I got to tell you, I learned something there, because as you were describing the Wedge and Ruby's right up behind us here on the pier, I didn't know that was the very first Ruby's built. I've been to Ruby's all over South Coast Plaza and all the Huntington Beach Pier all the way up and all the way down, one along the Pacific Coast Highway, but I didn't know this was number one, so I learned something today.
And it actually has a heated patio right up on top. That's not a bad spot to dine and watch the sunrise or sunset. So
you mentioned this was really a dancing town. I remember my dad, as in fact the family owned one of the islands here with a small crossing bridge to it. My dad actually honeymooned on that island, had an uncle that was a doctor at the time in the early 50s, and they actually owned the island, and Island Street now goes to that, and it's a locked gate, and you actually had to park the car and walk over to the island. There was one house on it then. They had tennis courts and pool and all that. And today I think there's 14 or 15 houses over there, but the ballroom was here, and this was known for dancing.
Right. Yeah, that's a very small island. That's Bay Island. Yeah, and there's still only about 20 homes on that island. It's a private island. No automobiles are allowed on that island. It only has a footbridge to this day. Only Segways and golf carts are allowed up on that island. And interestingly enough, according to the residents, it has the largest concentration of billionaires per square foot anywhere in the United States.
I got to tell you, I believe it. I know they sold the island in the late 50s, and then things started really happening down there, as it did here in the whole peninsula. A lot of things happened. But let's ask, before we get back to Segway, I'm feeling real comfortable here all of a sudden on the Segway. Well, let's mention what we're doing here. Helmets on, we're riding the Segways. But there was talk at one time they were going to do away with the bumper cars over there, the arcade and the Ferris wheel. Is that not happening now?
Yeah, no, actually that's still underway. Basically what's going on in the fun zone area is that, the fun zone's been back here in Balboa since the mid-1930s, and we have a new nautical museum that's going to be heavily investing there within the next 3 years. They're going to be reconstructing the entire area that's up on the brick. The merry-go-round possibly is going to be moved over here to the base of the pier, and we're going to get a lot of great new activities for kids to enjoy over in the fun zone area. So we're all looking forward to that. The Ferris wheel will remain, as will the boat rental places and parasailing and jet skis that are over there.
All right. The tours that you do, where you've got a tour group out, and we've got some shots of them, they're actually out doing a tour. I mean, they actually go out and tour. They see some of the homes. They actually go down the boardwalk, the pier, and so forth. Now, these tours, describe the tours and the cost if people want to come down, and how to find you. Is there a website?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is at segwayoc.com, and tours $65 a person is the cost. Essentially, we train you, bring you out here on the pier, go around the park area a couple times Williams, which is just down to the south of us here, and then we go all the way down, all the way to the Wedge. That's our final destination. Then we bring you back up along the harbor side here, and back through the fun zone, and then back to the store. So it's about an hour and 20 minutes of riding time, 10 minutes of training.
Now, what is the normal person, if you're just out for the first time, before the legs get tired or standing on a Segway, what's the normal time to be on a Segway?
Well, it depends. The first time you ride a Segway, you're going to get a little muscle tension. There's some isometrics that happen in your feet. So basically, we do have a stop that's down by the Wedge. It's about a half hour, 40 minutes before that first stop. And then there's a break there where we give you a little history of the area. So about 5 minutes off the Segway, you wiggle your toes, get some circulation going to the bottom of your feet again, and then back on the Segway for another half hour, 40 minutes.
All right, and the Segway itself, when we're out, you said the about 24 miles or so on the charge. And then again, the safety things that we need to think about, just what we've talked about, very simple.
Absolutely. Couple things. Whenever you're riding a Segway in a group, you always want to keep about 8 to 10 feet of space between one another when you're moving. That way, if the person in front of you stops, you've got time to do the same. Probably don't want to talk to the person ahead or behind you, because you're probably not looking at where you're going if you're doing that. Also, you want to stay away from any kind of posts, curbs, any stationary object that'll cause the wheel to stop, because that way, you can lose your balance and then you can fall off. But essentially, as long as you're alert and you look out for those things, you're in pretty good shape.
All right. Well, Scott, let's get some riding time in here. Let's go out and tour around a little bit. We're going to catch up with the group, and we'll be back to wrap up this show in just a moment. Stay with us, everybody. Why? Because you ought to know. We'll see you soon. Well, hey, everybody, that's going to put the wraps on another show. A little training, a little riding today. Scott, thanks so much for having us right here at Segway of Orange County.
You're quite welcome, Jim.
All right. We can come down and take the tour anytime, and it's what it's all about. Look at this. I'm starting to feel comfortable on this, and it is comfortable, and it's a new way to see everything, especially here at Balboa. And we've had a great time here. And if you want to find out about it, Scott, what's that website real quick?
SegwayOC.com.
SegwayOC.com. Why are we here, Segway of Orange County? Simply because you ought to know. I'm not letting go of the handlebar. No way. See you next time, everybody.